You a Christian?
Yeah. So the rumor has it, written in the book. So I have like this classic evangelical conversion story, right down to saying the sinner's prayer. And I remember in my high school youth group, like the emphasis was always evangelism, evangelism, evangelism. Go tell people about Jesus, make friends, be a witness, and then, spring Jesus on them, kind of a thing, right? Like, but the emphasis was always, eternity's at stake. You need to constantly be thinking about how to tell people and explicitly, verbally tell people about Jesus with the goal of them converting to Christianity from whatever, right? So, but now, got some decades under my belt in some different circles, doing adult things. I'm wondering, I'm not hearing as much about evangelism. Now, some of it may just be the sources and the websites that I visit have changed or whatever. But I'm wondering, is there still an emphasis on evangelism? Should there be? Has it become so corrupt or stigmatized that we don't need to do it or rethink it? And basically, I'm wondering one basic, simple question. Is evangelism still a thing?
Wow. So it's funny. My conversion story was akin to that. I heard my father preach, and he preached back then, super fire, brimstone, like very passionately. And there was like hell is hot and eternity is a long time. That's what his grandmother used to tell him. So, he said, that's what my grandmother used to tell me. And he said, I had this nightmare dream and, realized that I was going the wrong way. So it's very interesting because it was always tied in with something else, but it was like, that was typically the catalyst, and he was describing like how hot he felt like hell was and everything. So I was like, listen, I told him, listen, if I'm going to the hot place, Pensacola's hot. If you say it's hotter than this, it's not for me. That was like my whole thing. I was like, man, I'm going to the hot place.
Yes.
But like, then I started to like, he didn't really emphasize that with me personally. He emphasized more of my relationship with God and, how does God feel when you do something that's wrong, right? Like, what are you doing to God? But also, what are you doing to your own soul? All these things that made sense to me, right? And I understood. And I still understand, but I think for a lot of people, the tactics that we used back in the day are different than the tactics that we use now. And so we're believers in Jesus and preach, teach, operate in authority oftentimes in a local church. And so as we navigate this, I found that a lot of people feel a little uncomfortable talking about evangelism.
Yes.
Feels a little icky sometimes.
Even using that word.
Or even using that word, because that word feels out of touch with where people are.
That's a good way to put it. It's a good way to put it because I think part of what drives this question for me is thinking about the context and the connotation of evangelism. So especially in the United States, that's like characterized by Billy Graham style crusades and making a decision for Jesus. And then it gets sort of systematized and programmed in things like the four spiritual laws, evangelism explosion. There's also the seeker-sensitive movement of the church, which is the movement where I became a Christian, where the emphasis is always outward facing. And how do you bring people in?
The most amount of people,
usually from the very same demographic. And so it has this almost like door-to-door salesman, sleazy, kind of formulaic, I think is a word a lot of people would use to describe it. And when I say, is evangelism still a thing? I think a lot of people have caught on to that and have a negative association with the more formulaic, programmatic forms of evangelism that a lot of us grew up with and learned about. And so now I'm wondering, well, is there a thing after the thing? Is there a post-evangelism, if you will? I don't know.
So when you talk